But we begin this week with the vice presidential debate and what was most likely the last debate of the 2024 presidential election cycle. A defining characteristic of most VP debates is to do no harm. And while neither candidate had any major gaffes, both had high and low moments. It was a moment for both candidates to introduce themselves to the electorate, and in what was seen as a breath of fresh air to many voters, they saw a definitive policy debate that allowed voters to hear the viewpoints of important issues of each campaign, including stances on the economy, immigration, health care, and reproductive rights. Vance argued his running mate would act on what he feels are empty promises from the current administration. Walz argued they had their chance and can't be trusted.
Kamala Harris is not running as a newcomer to politics. She is the sitting vice president. If she wants to enact all of these policies to make housing more affordable, I invite her to use the office that the American people already gave her, not sit around and campaign and do nothing while Americans find the American dream of homeownership completely unaffordable.
When Mike Pence made that decision to certify that election, that's why Mike Pence isn't on this stage. What I'm concerned about is, where is the firewall with Donald Trump? Where is the firewall if he knows he could do anything, including taking an election, and his vice president's not going to stand to it? That's what we're asking you, America. Will you stand up?
Now, as of now, there are no scheduled debates left in the cycle, so it appears it will be a campaign blitz in the last month to Election Day. So, Senator Webb, I want to go ahead and start the conversation with you here. Just looking back on the debate from a few days ago, what sticks out in your memory now that we've had some time to digest it?
I had to watch it at the gym because our power was out due to the storm, but certainly the civil discourse between the two men, for the most part, even in disagreement, they maintained a level of decorum that was quite refreshing in today's political climate.
Representative Moser, same question. What are the takeaways that are still sitting with you?
Well, I would agree that it was refreshing to see a polite, respectful debate. And I feel like J.D. Vance really kind of carried the debate. He was calm, cool, collected. He was very personable, confident, and articulated his policy positions very well, I thought. Seemed to me that Walz was having an off night, and he just didn't come off as confident, a little out of his league. Maybe it was nerves, maybe, I'm not sure, but you know, I think that there were some gaffes on his part that we're likely to hear again.
Would you call Vance the winner of the debate?
I would.
What do you think?
Well, I think being an attorney and a trained, educated professional and serving in the capacity that he does certainly helps. I mean, he's a lecturer, he's a well-trained professional, and he's polished and intelligent. I think Walz performed well. I think he came off as gubernatorial, and that's his capacity. You know, his background's a teacher, an educator, and it's just a little different dynamic going in. So, but I thought both of them performed well, and I thought they probably underestimated Walz a bit, and I thought he did a fine job. There
was some mention of gaffes, and I do want to point out Walz had a tough moment whenever he was talking about his trips to China. There was also a moment there where Senator Vance got in an exchange with the moderators over what's happening in Springfield. As more time grows between the debate, ultimately, will those gaffes matter to voters?
I think everybody realizes everybody's human in this game. I mean, at every level, everybody's human. The nature of the beast is such that sometimes you can't remember everything. Sometimes there's embellishment. Sometimes there's confusion. I don't think voters hold it against you as long as you acknowledge that and you're sincere.
Yeah, I mean, there were some moments that I think will be memorable. I don't ever think it's a good idea to call yourself a knucklehead on national television, and I think that that's probably going to follow Governor Walz. But I think that overall it was a good debate, it was a good policy discussion, and it was very respectful. And I think that the viewers will likely remember that, and hopefully that'll make a difference in how folks make a decision November 5th.
So you all are politicos, and you all know how these types of things can reverberate in your own communities. By and large, generally, most analysts would tell you that the VP debate barely makes a difference in the grand scheme of things, and that's if the voters even tuned in. Is there anything that you're all hearing from voters at home, or can you add some additional insight as to why it doesn't really move the needle with voters as much?
Yeah, I mean, typically we don't hear a lot from the vice presidents, especially the candidates, but I think in this case we've had so much movement with a brand new candidate on the Democrat side, and clearly we want to know more about her and her pick for vice president. You know, President Trump chose J.D. Vance, and he was, I thought, an unlikely prospect, but he is doing very well. He's articulating policy positions well. I think that he has shown himself to be very, very intelligent and decisive, confident, and I think that's what the voters want.
Anything you wanted to add to that point?
It's just the job description. I mean, and how much power that they have to implement policy or do anything. Most of them pick a topic or something and stick with that. But certainly, excuse me, I think it's important, and some of the observations that I have, you know, because when you get to a certain age and you know, the future's not promised, and you have the potential for having an older president in office now and a potentiality of another aging president. I think the vice president position is certainly elevated and needs to be looked at now more than ever.
One heartbeat away from the presidency. We'll have to leave it right there.